Hello, everybody. My name is Christian Klein. I'm a senior cloud architect with Elasticys and researcher at Umeå University, both located in Sweden. So KubeCon just finished last week, and it was absolutely an amazing experience. But on the other hand, it was also kind of a lot to unpack. Therefore, I have the pleasure to have with me Jessica, Ihor, Kasper, and Johan, who will try to help us out and navigate this very complicated space and let us, get a hold of the highlights of KubeCon. Welcome, everybody. Let me take you in the order that we had you on the slides. Jessica, would you like to say something about yourself?
Hi, yeah, sure. My name is Jessica. I work as a platform engineer at Untitled, and this is my, I think, fourth KubeCon, so it's been fun.
Thank you. Ihor, would you like to talk about yourself?
Sure. I'm a developer advocate at CNCF, and I'm a big friend of the Nordics community and a big fan of the Nordics community, so happy to be here. It's hard for me to count how many KubeCons have I attended, but probably it's been since the beginning of the universe. So
Kasper, what about you?
Yeah, hello, my name is Kasper. I work as a lead platform architect at a company called Lunar. I'm also a CNCF ambassador, so cheers. Hi.
Hi, and let's welcome also Johan.
Hi, Christian. I'm Johan Tordsson. I'm CTO and co-founder of Elasticys, and I've been following the KubeCons for a few years at least.
Thank you so much to all of you, and welcome to our virtual studio. Let's dive right into it. Jessica, what are your favorite takeaway from KubeCon?
It's a good question. I think it's for me, it's still like the amount of new projects being brought in, like to the sandbox stage. It's so many cool things coming out, and I think in general, I'm very happy about the project, especially called the Backstage, which is focusing on the developer experience of the consumers of the projects that we are looking at. Which is something, of course, that I'm very interested in as a platform engineer. I think it has great potential, and I'm really excited about it.
Can you tell us a bit more about Backstage? I never heard of it.
Well, Backstage is backstage.io. You can check it out. It's basically a developer experience focused tool where you can gather all of the tools that you use. So if you are you can create new projects, you can deploy applications. If you're using Argo CD, there's a plugin for that. If you're using Prometheus, there's a plugin for that, etc. And you can bring all of the things into one page where the developers can go. And you can also add something that they had a talk about that was called Tech Talks. I will see what it was called. I have it in my notes. A second. Tech Talks, Unlocking the Potential of Engineers' Collective Knowledge is the talk called from one of the presenters. And it's about basically how if you have the documentation next to your code inside the Backstage, you can bring that into its separate tab. So when you go look at an application, it's easy to find the documentation that is connected to that. It makes it easy for the developer who develops the application to write the documentation because it's in the same place where they write the code. And for the consumer of that, it's easy to find and it's easy to see it connected to where it's being written. So I see great potential, and I like to focus on the end user. The focus is who is going to read this documentation. It's not focused on solely just writing documentation for documentation's sake. It's meant to be read at one point. And I love that emphasis.
I can definitely see how that can make the end user's life easier, but also as a platform engineer, maybe reduce some of the burden on you. Ihor, would you like to share your favorite highlights? We can't hear you.
I was muted probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm unmuted right now. Yes. So first of all, I'd like to share that I'm really impressed about the quality of the event itself, and based on the feedback from the community, I feel that we did it way better than, for example, last year when like some people were concerned about the quality of the platform that has been used as a hosting for the event and so on. So I would say that this will still a little bit challenging, and obviously there is no virtual event in the world that can replace completely the face-to-face experience that we are that is well known at the regular KubeCons that we had before the pandemic. But I would say that from the technical quality standpoint and from the talks quality standpoint, this probably was one of the best KubeCons on my from those KubeCons that I remember. And speaking about the talks and about the general stuff that has been highlighted at the event, one of the most interesting technical talks was exactly that Jessica has highlighted a few minutes ago about the backstage. So this is the pretty new CNCF project. It has joined our foundation a few months ago. And unfortunately, I haven't had enough experience with it before KubeCon. But exactly the talk that Jessica has highlighted really encouraged me to take a look a little bit deeper into this project. So from my personal standpoint, this is one of the most promising projects that we currently have in the cloud native ecosystem and in the CNCF sandbox specifically. We'll see how it goes, like what is the future of this project, but again, it's really promising. Outside of that, I also want to highlight a few talks. I mentioned them on Twitter a few days ago, but just to reiterate, there are at least 3 talks that are really worth watching if you haven't did it before. And even for those people who don't have, for those people who haven't purchased the ticket to KubeCon, and all of them will be available in a few weeks on YouTube. So they're definitely worth watching. So first of all, it's the talk by Jan Coldwater and Kate Cosgrove about, how the social interactions can be sometimes difficult and how they can lead into even more difficult challenges and how to solve them later. Another one is an absolutely Oscar-winning talk by Tabby Sable and Alec Roberts. It's technical about security, and that's it. You have to watch it. There is literally no person in the world who can explain you what's happening there. So better just watch it. And the last one is the one of the keynotes on the final day of the conference, led by Eva Black and Mr. Bobby Tables, who are the active members of the Cloud Native community and Kubernetes community specifically, who are mostly highlighting the. I would say that I would call it as a social aspect of being a contributor to the cloud native ecosystem and open source in general. So those are 3 talks, 3 major talks. I definitely suggest everyone on this stream to watch later. I would definitely highlight the backstage talk as my personal. I really love this talk from all the technical talks, from just the purely technical talks that have been presented on the recent KubeCon. This is one of my favorites, especially because this project became my personal favorite. And the bonus one, the keynote by Cheryl Hahn, who is a VP of ecosystem at CNCF. And technically, this is the keynote where she's been presenting the end user work, but the way how it's been presented, and especially the highlights from the end users from the cloud native community were definitely worth watching. Yeah. And obviously, congrats to Spotify for winning this award.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, Ihor. Kasper, would you like to share your favorite takeaways?
Yeah, I think I'll join the choir here. My 3 top talks is also the 3 talks that Ihor just mentioned. So yeah, definitely go watch those because they're really, really great. And also joining the choir on backstage as well. We've been adopting backstage. I think we've been running backstage now for half a year or something like that, and can definitely join what's been said about backstage and the vision there. It's really an interesting project. And as And that was also a big focus on this conference. I think Ambassador Labs actually also announced something very similar to Backstage. So just the general focus on what Ambassador Labs defines as the developer control plane, just having one single pane of entry for developers and minimize the cognitive load is something that's going to be very important and going to help a lot of end users and users of all these technologies going forward. We usually have 10, 15 different places that we need to find information, and if we can put that into one single place and make it available and easy for our developers to find that information, then that is really important and just saves a lot of time in general. So I'm joining the choir here.
Johan, do you happen to have a non-Backstage favorite project that you have taken away from the conference?
Not necessarily projects, but I'm very into the whole security space, given personal interest and company profile. So I think there was a lot of interesting talks here, including at least two that delved into the very intricate issues of multi-tenancy and sharing, and what do I really share with my fellow co-workers or teammates or just someone from the same organization, and do I share clusters, do I share namespaces and the similar. So there's a lot of non-intuitive answers in this space depending on what your setup and the context and the organization you're working in. So there was one talk by Yaki Liu from University of Chicago about isolation levels. So that was very interesting. So otherwise, I think that, just as the previous speakers, there's a lot of focus on developer productivity and developer experience. And that makes a lot of sense given the community is growing very fast. So a lot of people are trying to pick up Kubernetes. And 4 or 5 years ago, those that used it were sort of also the developers, and then the circles are broadening and broadening. So a lot of people are nowadays using Kubernetes without really knowing it. And all of these tools, including a Backstage that tries to make it smoother developer experiences, makes a lot of sense. Because if you look back to that very, very hard to remember cloud native definition, it tells a lot. It basically says that, cloud native is technology that allows developers to build better things faster with lower risk. And if that is the sort of the mission statement, then all the sort of tools that contributes to that makes it easier for developers seems to be spot on.
So, thank you, Johan. Since we already started to dive into the project discussion, Jessica, would you like to highlight some of your favorite projects that you have just learned of, or they have seen tremendously growing during this KubeCon, and that you think everybody should be kind of having an eye on? Non-Backstage project, maybe? Yeah,
I was going to say Backstage. No, I think it's. I'm really interested in OPA. I think it's a super interesting project, and I also like it for the. I can see it once again as a tool for developers to understand what is important to focus on. So if we can use it as a help for them to understand, it's important to set a resource request, it's important to do these kind of things, then we can help them build more stable applications and to use it as an empowerment tool rather than a restraining tool, which I think that the changes since I saw it in Barcelona during one of the intro sessions there, it feels like it's come a far away from there, and it's turned more into this empowering tool rather than a restraining tool, which it looked like starting out. So I think that is super interesting. And I did not watch any talks myself, but I do know that my fellow teammates watched a lot of talks around Kubeflow and were very impressed. They have themselves been looking at Airflow and are currently running it, and they were like super impressed by the project. And I kind of regretful that I didn't pick that one. So those are like a couple of projects that I would like to have.
Thanks for sharing. Ihor, what are your favorite projects or projects that you think people should be watching closely during this time?
Yeah, I would say, so I will not highlight any specific projects from the CNCF umbrella. All of them like was checking out, depending on like what your purpose is. But I'd like to highlight 2 projects that I really love from the wide ecosystem. Those that are not the projects of the CNCF itself, but definitely worth checking out. So first of all, it's Kubeflow. that Jessica has mentioned. And this is one of the early most notable projects from the Kubernetes ecosystem for years. So it's not really a new project. It's mature enough. So as far as I remember, the first time when I heard about Kubeflow was like around 3 or 4 years ago at one of the previous KubeCon keynotes. Probably it was in Copenhagen back in 18 or something like that. So at that point of time, Kubeflow was really a young project with the version something like 0.2 or like 0.3 or something like that. Right now, it's a project that has already reached its first major milestone. So as far as I remember, they're right now at 1.4 or something like that. So this is a pretty mature and widely used and widely adopted project. And from a personal standpoint, this is the project that definitely highlights the benefits of using Kubernetes in some specific end user cases. So this is an amazing implementation of how can you use the AI and machine learning pipelines, and how can you combine them with Kubernetes, and how can you benefit in the machine learning world from using Kubernetes on the lower level under this tool as a foundation for the machine learning pipelines. Another project that is also like from one hand, it's not so young as many of us think about it, but it's also well actively growing and well received these days. But I feel that right now is a moment when this project is actively becomes actively used and actively promoted. This is the WebAssembly, and even at the beginning of this KubeCon, we had a dedicated collocated event specifically focused on WebAssembly. WebAssembly is not a new tool. It has been developed years ago, but just in recent times, it has been significantly reworked and became widely used, not just in the purely web environments, for example. And coming back to talks again, just to reiterate, if you don't know what WebAssembly is and how can you use it, and you'd like to get started with WebAssembly, another keynote from the last day of KubeCon that was delivered by Ralph Spilacci from Microsoft and his colleague, who are both working on the WebAssembly. That this keynote is definitely worth checking out if you're interested in this tool. I'm personally learned a lot from that talk, and if you're also interested in this tool, so it's worth checking out.
Thank you, Ihor. Kasper, would you like to share your favorite projects, the ones that you think everybody should have their eyeballs on?
Yeah, I can try it. I think another, just to highlight another sort of topic over the week was GitOps, and combining that with a project. I think a project like Flux is very interesting, but also the sort of the next level iteration of what GitOps is going to be with Cluster API, and how we can actually manage not only just applications, but our clusters, our AWS resources, or whatever cloud we are using with a project like Crossplane or something like that. We can commit everything into Git and have some kind of reconciliation and some controllers running somewhere to actually do the hard part and make that happen for us. That's something that I think is very interesting, and Flux as a project is really interesting as well.
Thank you. Johan, what were your favorite projects?
Yeah, so there were quite a few, as always, and increasingly many. There were a great recap by Justin Cormack when he did the speed run through the sandbox. So what's in sandbox nowadays? And then it was super fast. I actually had to rewatch that one twice. And it's like, oh, what is this? What is this? What is this? But then all of a sudden it was mentioned, and then we have this Dex thing. Like, what is that new? We've been using that for long. So that would be my favorite. So Dex is a sort of an identity gateway for connecting all sorts of identity providers with OpenID Connect, and then being able to log into all of different things, including Kubernetes and many other CNCF products. And we've been using that for long, and we like it a lot. It's sort of the Swiss Army knife of authentication for Kubernetes. And it's very.
Are you talking about the X project?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be my favorite. Just a very personal taste because we're using it. And happy to see it in CNCF. And I mean, this also tells a very different story because for some, graduated projects may be a bit risky, versus for others, particularly sandbox project may even be production grade. So I mean, it very much depends on what you're using, what organization you are, and what's your goals. So that's yeah,
interesting to find out about this. Jessica, do you have any news about you said that there was a huge focus on end users. Was there some kind of new radar that was released, or could you tell us a little bit more about how this focus on end users has been achieved?
I'm not too sure there, but I do know that the CNCF does an end user report every year, which I would recommend checking out if you haven't, because what it does is that it asks all these questions to the companies that are in the end user community. And you can go to cncf.io/end user, I think, to read more about that. And what they do is to send all these the service out with all these questions and ask people, how do you work with these tools? How are they working out? What are your impressions about this? What's the size of the environment that you're running? Like if you're running Kubernetes, how many clusters? How large are they? Etc. And to gather like all these insights in what people do. And one of the things that came out of that my team had used for was a report, a tech radar on secret management. And what do different end user companies use when it comes to that. So when we were going to look at secret management, we took up the tech radar and we checked it out, and we saw like these are the things that people are using. And that was super useful. I did not see much of that at KubeCon. That is more of a continuous work happening that I would strongly recommend people checking out because it has been super useful to me, as I said. But what I did see was that we have been promoting more tools that focus towards the end user experience, because we have during a long time talked about how to operate Kubernetes cluster, how to maintain them, how to further develop them, and not so much about how is the user experience of running on top of this. And I saw a little bit more around that and other projects as well. I have like some more talks listed that I'm going to watch that I haven't had time to view yet. But I think that also the security talks touch on that a little bit. Like from an end user perspective, how secure are your applications? What should you look out for? How can you look at these things, and how can you learn more about what it means for your application? And I know that in networking talks might be over the head for a lot of people, but still to understand some of that, to understand how the networking impacts the security of your containers is super important, because I get so many questions from our users in our cluster, like how can I connect to the service? What's happening here? How do I debug it? And all these things. So to make that easier will come a long way, I think. It's the next step for the development.
Yeah, the better they understand the system, the easier it is to secure it and to reduce its blast radius and attack surface, of course.
Exactly, and to be fair, it's been a very complicated project. I mean, take a look at Kubernetes. There's so many moving parts. There's so many different things you can do. It's hard for someone that just want to write code to get to know and understand all the different parts. So if we can make it more visible, more simple, and more streamlined, that is super useful for everyone.
While we're on the topic of security, I just want to highlight Johan's talk as well, because that was actually a really, really, really great talk about working with Kubernetes and cloud native technology and GDPR. How do you actually handle that being in the cloud? And so, yeah, I just want to highlight your talk, Johan, because that was really interesting and so really insightful to actually sort of get some first-hand experience in what you actually need to do and consider when you are serving European citizens. So definitely check that out as well.
It's on the list, I can tell you.
Ihor, would you like to add anything else on the end user experience or any other topics that you feel were touching upon that? You mentioned something about the Spotify receiving a prize.
Yeah, so Spotify received a CNCF End User Award. If you don't know what is it, so CNCF is awarded on an annual basis one of the most notable and one of the most active end user companies in the cloud native space. One of the CNCF end user companies, and actually this is the work not by CNCF directly only. So it's not that CNCF staff just making decisions who should receive this award, but it's based on the voting by the end user members. So this is basically the award to the company from the end user space that is definitely recognized by other end user companies. And speaking about Spotify, I was not really surprised when Spotify received this award. I'm not gonna talk about backstage again, but they are doing Spotify is doing a really notable job in the cloud native world. And I would say that's probably one of the most active end users and one of the most active contributing companies in general, especially from the end user standpoint. Because especially a few years ago, like what I've noticed with the companies that are contributing or not contributing to the cloud native space is that it's actually absolutely natural for the vendor companies or for the service companies that are offering some products or offering some services based on Kubernetes or based on other cloud native technologies to contribute to upstream, because they're basically building their products on top of upstream and they're selling them later. Selling services or selling goods, and it's a natural way to be involved into the open source development process. But not every single end user company is doing the same, because there are many companies in the world that are mostly using these technologies, and that's totally fine. So they're not building anything on top of it; they're just consuming they can consume directly some pieces of the open source code and package them themselves, for example, within their own organization, or just purchase the goods and purchase the services from other vendors. But in this specific case, I would mention that Spotify is one of those companies that are actively involved into the community life, actively involved into donating something to the open source ecosystem and to the open source world. And I'm not only speaking about writing code, but obviously code writing is essential. Like if you have any projects in a house, like if you have any project that are developing within your company, you can donate them, and like writing code is essential. But this is one of those companies that are actively involved into the general cloud native community life. And outside of that, not to mention Spotify only, I would say that this year we have noticed that way more companies, end user companies, are actively involved into the cloud native world, into the open source world. Because if we'll compare this KubeCon with a KubeCon that has happened, like, let's say 5 years ago, somewhere like in 2016, for example, you could notice that back in 2016, there have been like around 90%, 95% of companies, of the vendor companies, or companies that are somehow related to building their tools or building and offering some services on top of this, on top of these tools. This year, you can see that there are way more companies that are actually using these technologies. And even today at this talk, we have two end user companies representatives who are also involved into community life. So this is definitely a good sign for the general community health, that not only vendors are participating in its life.
Yeah, I can definitely recommend being an end user. It's an awesome community to be part of. So if your company is actively using one of the CNCF projects, consider definitely joining the CNCF end user community. It doesn't cost that much, and it's easy to get started. So just a recommendation from my point.
As
Kasper,
an end user representative, right?
Yes. Kasper, would you like to you already took the microphone and highlighted a few things about the benefits of being an end user. Are any other things that the CNCF does for end users that have not been highlighted by Jessica and Ihor?
Well, I just think it's a really nice community. There's a lot of different kind of subgroups within the end user community. So if you are a financial institution, as we are, there's a group focused on that specific topic. So that's really interesting, just to be able to share your ideas and thoughts with other in sort of the similar place, similar regulations, and all of that. So it's nice to have a place where like-minded people can discuss the same problems that we see on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you when as an end user, you also get KubeCon tickets, and we can send our employees to the virtual KubeCon without paying for it. It's part of the membership as well, so that's also a nice benefit.
Mm-hmm. Johan, would you like to? Do you have any more thoughts on the topic of end users and what the CSCF does for them?
No, let's move on. I think we touched upon this.
Okay. Yeah. So we have quite a few comments from the watchers of this, and among others, they would like us to compose a watch list or good to watch list, and maybe also a list of good links to have. Let's also take one of the questions from the queue. So, what do you think is the future of hybrid conferences? So, right now, I mean, we had 2 KubeCons that went virtual, and there seems to be some signals that the next one might be physical. I would like to know a little bit more about you, like how. What was your experience participating in a virtual conference? How did you navigate it? And are you looking forward to going fully on physical, or would you like to see more hybrid conferences? Or I also heard people that they were really into virtual conferences. What are your thoughts about this, Jessica?
I'm mixed feelings. For me, it's hard to get the focus to stay at the conference when I'm not physically at the conference, because you get distracted by other things and stuff. On the other hand, this year it went really well. I've never got so much out from a virtual conference before. And I think part of it is due to a very good format of the conference. And honestly, part of it is due to my team who also went. And so each morning we sat down and we had like, okay, so what talk did you watch yesterday? Well, it was great. And what are you hyped about today? And then we had the ongoing chat with like, I watched this talk, it was really interesting. And here were the few things I think. And got more of, this meeting up with people in between talks and like sharing the experience and getting a lot of that actually being at a conference. And then also I thought it was great with the conversations going on in Slack during presentation as well from attendees with like comments, questions, thoughts on the talks and stuff. And that helped me keeping the hype up and the engagement because I'm easily distracted. It's a personal fault, I know it. So at the same time, I also know that the online, I like being in person at a conference is exhausting. I get almost like sick when getting home because my body is like, now I can calm down. So to some extent, I think it was great to be able to attend this virtually. I do hope that we can end up in a hybrid session setup there where people can be there, but also it's possible to consume it from remote as well. Because I know a lot of people have trouble traveling and going to conference. Not everyone can commit like a full week of being away from home and stuff like that. So I do truly hope that we will keep some of the elements from the virtual conferences in future as well, even though I'm personally looking forward to actually meeting people as well for real. Mixed feelings, as I said.
Despite being technology enthusiasts, we like people after all, right?
Yeah, that's strange, right?
Ihor, what are your thoughts on the future of hybrid conferences?
Yeah, so I'm gonna wear my CNCF and Linux Foundation hat for a few seconds. So first of all, I want to mention that we are planning, everything is is unstable, and there are so many things unpredictable in this world these days. But we're planning that we'll have the hybrid conference, the hybrid KubeCon later this year in October, and the face-to-face part, the offline part, should happen in Los Angeles in California, North America. At the same time, we understand that even by October, there are tons of reasons why people would not be able to make their in-person. Obviously, from the pandemic standpoint, from the pandemic reasons, like vaccines can go not everywhere and so on and so forth. And we also had enough concerns from the community members, even from the pre-pandemic life, when like there have been so many people who'd like to be at KubeCon but are not able to make it in person for various reasons. This could be the geopolitical reasons. This could be just purely geographical reasons. This can be some social, financial reasons, and so on. So there are tons of valuable people in this world who definitely have to be at the event, but they're not able to make it in person for various reasons. And the hybrid format will also solve this this part of the question as well. And moving forward, again, it's not like 100% commitment, but we are planning, the Linux Foundation and the CNCF specifically is planning that all the major events moving forward will run in the hybrid format. Even, even after the world will be back to normal and we forget about this pandemic life as about some, bad dream, but we still consider running the big events at the Linux Foundation in a hybrid format.
That's really cool.
Speaking about the experience of the further hybrid format, again, it's a little bit difficult to predict how will it go because we haven't had any similar experience yet. And we'll actually try it with a few smaller conferences right before KubeCon. So we plan, for example, the Open Source Summit. That is our previously biannual event. This year, there will be just a single one Open Source Summit that should happen in Seattle and in a hybrid format and in an online format. So we'll try this format with this pretty big event, but smaller than KubeCon in late September. And in October, we should be ready for the hybrid KubeCon, probably with some lessons learned from the Open Source Summit and so on. But we'll definitely work on our experience based, again, on the lessons learned that we'll learn from KubeCon in October. So we hope that even if there will be any challenges with that and this experience in October, we're gonna solve them by the next years.
And you were touching upon an interesting point that inclusivity and diversity was a very interesting. The CNCF have made it very clear that this is a core value of them, and they really want to focus on this. So then having a conference continuously hybrid and opening it up to everybody is, of course, part of it. So it's perfectly aligning with its values. Yeah, of course. In a pre-pandemic life, we've been trying to do some small events like Kubernetes forums, or encouraged our community members to run the Kubernetes community days or Cloud Native days in their local areas, which are definitely worth attending events. They're like pretty big in some specific areas, but they're still not the complete replacement for KubeCon. And for example, one of my last international business trips until today was back in February of last year to India, where we had the Kubernetes forums driven by CNCF and organized by CNCF for the local community, because it's obviously that the Indian community is one of the largest technology communities in the world, not only in the cloud native space, but in general. So we've been trying this format, and we've been running this format as kind of an alternative, not a replacement, but an alternative for KubeCon for the local communities. It went pretty well, but I had enough conversation with the local individuals who've been attending the Kubernetes forums. They've been really excited about these events, but they've been still looking for KubeCon. So hopefully with the hybrid format, again, it's not the same as being in person and watching these talks and like speaking with people face to face, but at least you won't feel so detached if you were not able to make it there in person. Thank you, Ihor. I feel that kind of cleared the question about the future of hybrid conferences. Let's take another question from the comment section. And people seem to be curious about both Kasper and Johan. You mentioned something about security and about isolation level and things like that. Would you like to answer this question about namespaces and multi-tenancy? Kasper, would you like to take your first stab at it?
I can try. I haven't seen that talk, so I'm not sure what the actual question is about. But yeah, of course, namespaces. That's many different kinds of way you can sort of divide your clusters and provide access for your developers. So yeah, I think it's about what kind of organization you are and how you should actually do that. But one thing that might be important is that to provide your developers access to some kind of namespace, access to the services, so they have the opportunity to go in there. I'm not sure if this answers the questions, but I think it's a more sort of it really depends on your organization, your setup, and what kind of requirements that your organization have and need to follow. I think Johan probably has some more insights here.
Yeah, can I just, before handing over to Johan, can I just have a quick question, like on the axis of throw as many clusters as possible versus share as many clusters as possible, approximately where you are on this, between these two extremes?
So currently we only have 4 clusters, so I would say on a few clusters, and but we are sort of moving in another direction as well. So yeah.
Interesting to know. Johan, do you have any more thoughts on namespaces and multi-tenancy?
Yeah, I think, as Kasper summarizes well, it sort of depends on your policies and how your organization is set up. But my general rule of thumb here is that people who do not trust each other should not share clusters. So multi-tenancy in the widest sense that it would bring people from different organizations or similar onto the same cluster, that's a major no-no to me as a guiding principle. Then how you actually divide your clusters among teams or individuals or whatnot, that is more a matter of personal taste and how your organization looks like. Yeah.
But can I still do a bit of development on my production cluster?
Not if you ask me, but
Okay, time flies when it's fun. Would anybody like to share some final thoughts of what would you like the audience to remember from this year's KubeCon and to make them look forward to the next year's KubeCon? Jessica? Microphone? Can you turn on your microphone?
Yeah, I was going to ask, can you start from the other way around so I can think and hear the other say something first?
Sure, Johan. What would like people to remember about today's KubeCon to get them excited about next year's KubeCon?
To me, it's all about the sort of encouragement and the atmosphere. I get really inspired by attending KubeCon. Like, yeah, there's so much great thing we can do with this. So to me, that's mostly the spirit of anything is doable.
Kasper?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I just want to just follow a little bit up on the question on in-person. I really look forward to the in-person, but having sort of the Slack channels with the hallway tracks and stuff like that, that is also a really fun way to engage and interact with other people. So definitely remember the sort of the people side of a conference when attending virtual conferences as well. It's just my takeaway.
Ihor, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like people to remember this KubeCon as the final ever virtual only KubeCon. I hope that we'll be able to meet in person. If not in Los Angeles, so next year in Europe, we should definitely make it.
That depends less on us than on the rest of the world, but it's a very, ambitious goal, nevertheless.
I still hope that we'll be able to make it. And obviously, I'm also looking forward. It's not, yeah, Kasper. It's not only about the KubeCon, but in general, I'd like to see like this. The last 13 or 14 months were like virtual only for most of us around the globe. And I would definitely like to see more face-to-face activities around the globe in the cloud native communities. So I'm not only speaking about KubeCon as a huge event, but I'm also looking forward to the upcoming Nordics Cloud Native Day, for example, Cloud Native Days that are planned sometime in 2022, I assume, for the local meetups that they're currently happening in a virtual format. I hope that at least by the beginning of the next year, or fortunately by the end of the current year, we'll be able to at least to meet each other in the smaller groups in our smaller areas and to have some valuable conversations, like just sharing some food and and some soft drinks between each other. So it's a little bit different experience. Again, as I mentioned before, there is no virtual experience that can completely replace. It can be a complete replacement for the face-to-face experience. So I hope that we'll be able to be back to normal as soon as possible, and I'm looking forward to see you all in person soon.
Yeah, Jessica, what are your
Not
final
extra
thoughts? Yeah.
in 2022, right?
I think I have only one concluding thing. I agree with all that everyone else said, but I would like to highlight the willingness to help and the approachingness of the community. Everyone is super helpful. You can approach everyone and you can ask questions, and people are very open and sharing what they do and what they know and all these things. And I think it's been more, it's the community that I've seen that is most willing to share everything. And I really appreciate that, and that makes me happy attending.
Yeah, and we have been doing today quite a bit of sharing from you four, so thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for taking your time, and for the audience too. I hope you got the best out of KubeCon, and we're looking forward to giving you some pointers on the best talks to watch, so that you don't miss out on the key things that happen at KubeCon. Thank you very much, and hope to see you in person.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.